What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to bring you a quick guide and tutorial on how to make your own YouTube thumbnail. This is not going to be a real in-depth overview on how to do this. This is mainly going to mirror what I actually do when I create my thumbnails, and what I try to do is try to do them in under 15 minutes. You could spend a ton of time on these things, but this is not something I do full-time. I have a regular full-time job. And I try to do it as quick and as efficient as possible, and I think I have a pretty good process down, so I thought I would show that to you guys. One thing to point out is that I do have Adobe Premiere and Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. I do use Premiere and Photoshop for this. This is not something you technically need. There's all kinds of different free software out there you can use, and they're all about the similar process. But I highly recommend looking into at least downloading like a free trial of Adobe Premiere and Lightroom. Or Photoshop to kind of get an idea if it's something you may want to do in the future. Makes creating thumbnails much easier, and you could do it fairly quickly. So what I'm going to do is kind of mirror what I'm doing on my computer. We're going to go in the computer room and kind of run through on how I create my thumbnails, which if you think about it is probably the most important thing in your video, because it's what the first thing people are going to click on. So if you don't have a good thumbnail, it'll make it difficult for you to grow your channel or get your video out there for people to watch. So let's jump in, let's get in the computer room, and I will go through on how I try to create my thumbnail in the most efficient and effective way as possible. Let's go. All right, everyone, so now that we're sitting back at the computer, I am going to mirror my desktop here so you can get an idea of how I go about doing this. I already have Adobe Premiere up, so basically what I do is go about and edit my video like I traditionally would, and this is how I get my thumbnail right off the bat. So I'll show you my little image here. There you go. You should be able to see my desktop now. So I originally just shoot a little bit of test footage beforehand, and that's what I have loaded up here on my timeline. So you can see all kinds of different footage. I will usually try to find good lighting, shoot 30 seconds of just general footage of me or the product I'm reviewing, or just general ideas of what I may want my thumbnail to be. And then I'll take that footage and put it into the timeline here and go and edit it. Now, my editing is fairly quick. I usually do some sharpening, which I will add there, and some color correction. I usually do this right off the bat before I go about watching the video, mainly because then when I start cutting it, I don't have to do it in chunks as I go. But once you do this, you can scrub through this timeline and get some pretty good thumbnails from this. So I'll do this real quick. I like my image a little cooler, so traditionally I move this down a little bit more to the blues. And then I will brighten it up a little bit. And that's usually it. So I shot 30 seconds of just test images in good lighting to kind of get a good punchy thumbnail. So I'll just scrub through the timeline here and find a spot where I like that's a pretty good image, so you could use that. You just hit this little export frame here to do that. Again, this is in Adobe Premiere. It's probably a similar process in Final Cut or iMovie or any of the free software out there. Usually you can capture an image from a video fairly easily, but that's how we do it from there. So that would be a good one. You could just hit that and save it to your desktop, and you would have a good standard image for your thumbnail. Another way to do this is just take a photo of yourself, but I find it's just easier just to jump right in and start editing your video. That way you can get the colors correct on how you want them. Just eliminates the step of trying to get a photo of yourself. But either way will good. You just need a good standard base image of what you want your thumbnail to be. So whether it be you or a product you're reviewing, that's how you're going to want to do it. So I generally just scrub through and I'll download 4 or 5 different images. That'd be a pretty good one. If you're wanting to do something a little silly, that'd be a standard one. But it's pretty simple to do, and we've spent 2 minutes on it, and already I've found 3 or 4 different general images that I have for my thumbnail. So that's it with Adobe Premiere and creating my thumbnail. Again, you can just take a photo of yourself. If you're using Final Cut or any other software out there, or iMovie, you can do it in there too, but since I have a license for this, this is what I'm using. But that's how I actually go about just getting my standard image. Fairly simple, not too complicated, and once you figure your software out that you're editing on, it's a pretty simple process. So now that we got this image, let's jump into Photoshop and we will go about getting our thumbnail created. Once you have the image that you're wanting to use, you can actually now go and create your thumbnail in Lightroom. We did our image through Adobe Premiere, but you can use a standard photo of yourself. So what we're going to do now is go into Photoshop, where we're going to finish all this out. So we have Photoshop opened here. We are going to go to File, New, And these are the custom settings I've already entered in, but you are going to need to adjust the width and height. It's 1280 by 720. This is the standard image that YouTube has been using for their thumbnails for a decade now. It hasn't changed. So once you have it set up, it's pretty easy, but these are all the settings here. And we're just going to go to name it as YouTube Thumb. And this will actually be your image on where you're actually going to do your thumbnail on. So what we want to do here is pick one of the photos that we used and just drag it onto the desktop. And that's it. So that's going to be the standard image of what our YouTube thumbnail is going to look like. So it looks pretty plain there, but the image looks pretty good. So that's why we did our editing first with the image before we put it on here. So what we actually want to do now is, since this is about YouTube and I like to add a little bit of graphics to my thumbnail, I'm going to do that. But what you see here is, one, this image is too large, and one, this white background, we need to get rid of it. So it's pretty simple to do that. You just go to this eraser tool, and then you just click on the background. And you see how the checkered pattern went into effect? Basically what that means is it's going to remove that background, but the thing is you have to save it under a specific file type. So you have to go to File, Save As, and you can only save it as the PNG. And that will basically remove that background, and you'll only get the standard YouTube image, so you can add a little bit of graphics, a little bit of flair to your actual thumbnail. Why you have to save it under PNG, I don't know why, that's just how it works. And you do that. And now you go back over here at the top and go back to your thumbnail. And this is where you're going to, wherever you save that image at, this is where you're actually going to go and find that image and drag it over on top, and then we'll add there. So you see how the white background is actually gone? So now we have a lot of flexibility with the image. So what I like to do is kind of shrink it down a little bit, move it to where you want it. I think I'll do it here on the left. So I'm going to move it up here, and then you hit this little OK to place it. And now that we have that, we want to add a little bit of text to our thumbnail. You do not have to do this. If you are fine with this thumbnail and how it is, you can go ahead and do that, but I like to add a little bit of text to it. So you just go to the text icon, and this is where you can get a little creative and spend too much time. I already have some of the fonts that I like using, so I will use those, and we will just go to your image, maybe. There we go. Creating. Sorry guys, I have no idea why this is not... I'm screen capturing, so it's probably eating away at my processor, so it probably doesn't like this, but creating, we'll just do, this is where you gotta put a title in, creating YouTube creating YouTube thumbnail. So again, you can use any title, any type of font you want. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. This is where you can spend a lot of time, but this is how I usually do it. So 100 is too big. You probably get by with 80. So then you will basically just move your image around here. Actually, that's too big. So we'll go back and turn it to 70. Again, it does take a little trial and error to get this correct, but as you can see, we're on 4 minutes now, so we're still under probably the 10-minute point. So now I see that I do not really like where this is placed, so I'm going to move this over here. And now you see this font. I don't really like the color of that. It doesn't really stick out very well, so I'm probably just going to do white. But you see, it still does not, the color in the text still does not stand out very well. So this is where you will go double click over here on the text, maybe. And this little layer style will pop up, and you can add different effects to it. So I usually do a strobe. Sometimes I do the inner glow, sometimes not, the outer glow, and the drop shadows. So this will add a little bit of background and border to the outline of your text. So that's it, guys. That's how I would generally create a YouTube thumbnail. Again, this was very simple to do. I would probably spend a little more time on it, but this is just a sample for the video. But this process generally takes me 10 minutes or less, sometimes 15, depending on how much time I want to spend on it. But that's it, guys. The only thing I do not like so far is that this is a little bit blank over here, so I probably would have done the image a little differently. I would have shot myself a little bit more off-center and fixed that, but I'm fine with this the way it is. I may change the text up a little bit, but that's generally it, guys. That is how I go about creating my YouTube thumbnail. It's a simple process. You could spend as much time or as little time as you want on it, but I find that's the first thing that most people look at is your YouTube thumbnail. So getting a good one, I think, is key. So that's it, guys. Once you get that 1280 by 720 standard image done in Photoshop, you save it as a JPEG, upload it to YouTube. Once you upload your video, there'll be a little thumbnail. I'm not going to show you how to do that. It's a pretty simple process. You guys are done. That's it. That's all it takes to create a good quality thumbnail. Yes, I do have a license to Adobe software, Adobe Premiere and Adobe Photoshop. I would highly recommend downloading free trials of it. I believe it's 30 or 90 days. Because if you're wanting to do some more YouTube videos as time goes on, you're probably going to look into software like that in the future anyways. You can use iMovie. There's some other free software. I don't know if DaVinci is free, but there's all kinds of different free software out there you can use to edit your photos and get an image just like this. But this is the process I use to try to make it as simple and quick as possible and try to create the best thumbnail I can. You can spend much more time on it if you want to mess with the fonts, or as you saw in that brief little tutorial there, I was a little too centered. I would have been preferred to be off a little bit this way. That way I could have added the text on the side without there being a blank space. But I'll probably try to find something to add there just to make the thumbnail a little bit more attractive, because that's the first thing people are going to see is your thumbnail. If you don't have a good one, they're likely not going to click on your video and watch it. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them below. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I will try to do more in-depth stuff as I go. It's hard to screen capture my screen, but I will try to do the best I can. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you guys have a good weekend, and I will see you guys next time.